Your Life is an amazing podcast, and it is presented and hosted by myself, Caro, and my sweet dog Sparky. Give it up for him. I hope you're ready. Enjoy. So, dear people, it is now 2020. So happy New Year to everybody. Super exciting about the new year. I was always very excited about 2020, and I cannot believe it is here with us now. And there is, in my opinion, no better way to start a new year than with Barbara. So I have a funny story. Barbara fell out of my dad's book shelf a while back. And I found her book there, was obsessed with the book, wrote it in one go. And then I thought, you know what? I'm just going to send this lady an email. Nothing will happen. I'm just going to tell her how much I loved her book. And within a few days, I got an email back. And then I actually did a few sessions with her because Barbara is also an amazing coach and just an amazing person. So I'm super excited about the episode with her today. So welcome, Barbara Berger.
Thank you for having me.
Yes! We're doing this.
I didn't know it was your dad's bookshelf. I
yes.
felt that.
Yes.
Your dad had The Road to Power.
Yeah, I was a little bit like, what is it doing here? I feel it was a little lost. And then I think my mom and I had a sort of moment like, yeah, I don't think he bought that. So there is a thing like, was it my mom, was it my dad? But at least, it was just nice that it was a beautiful moment of it stood out to me. And then it just grabbed me. And then of course the book itself grabbed me. And you were just saying a lot of people have a story about that book, Road to Power, right?
The book is called The Road to Power, Fast Food for the Soul. And I mean, it's today published in 30 languages. It's a bestseller in so many countries around the world and so on. And it has changed so many people's lives. And people contact me all the time with stories like yours. It's just amazing. But it tells me that, the great universal intelligence, the higher power, whatever we want to call it. This book was actually, I don't know if I ever told you, it was channeled to me.
Wow.
I don't think I've ever told you that story. I didn't sit down to write it.
Okay.
Yeah. It actually, well, that would be a good thing to share with our readers, I think, to start this. It's really a good way to start the new year, to be open to guidance from the universe. It was 20 years ago. I wrote this book. It came to me 20 years ago.
Wow.
And at that time, I was a single mom, 3 kids. I was working really hard to survive, and I was really stressed out of my mind. And then when the summer came, I decided that I had to take some time for myself. Mm-hmm. And I had been praying and meditating and all this, but I was just so stressed. I just decided that I wanted some space and time for me. So I told everyone that I was going away. Actually, I told everyone, I live in Denmark. Mm-hmm. I told everyone I was going to Australia, that I would be far, far away for 3 weeks. But so then I put my answering machine on, everything, but I didn't go anywhere. And every single day for the 3 weeks, I would go north of Copenhagen. There's some old woods and beaches, and I would go by myself into the woods and meditate and pray and go in silence and go to the beaches and go swimming and calm down and calm down and calm down. And then on the very last day, I was sitting on the beach, the last day of the 3 weeks. The sun was going down, and I was just sitting there very blissful, and it was like I suddenly got a knock on the head. And a voice said to me, Barbara, you're going to write a book. So take out a pencil and paper. So I took out a pencil and paper, and then the voice said, the title of the book is The Road to Power. And the first chapter is, and then the voice dictated every chapter and told me what I was going to write about in every chapter. And then when it got done dictating it, it said, now go home and write it. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Nothing had ever happened to me like that before. Mm-hmm. And so then I figured, okay, I better do what the voice says. So I went home and I wrote this. I had written a lot of books already before that book, but it was really, really easy. It just sort of, it wrote itself. And then after I had written the book, I was already a published author here in Scandinavia and other countries, and I sent the book to my publishers, and nobody would take it. And in fact, my publisher said, as an insult, wrote back, this is a lot of fast food for the soul.
Yeah.
And then I thought, brilliant, I'll use that.
Awesome.
And so, but then I decided that since this book had been delivered to me from the universe, and that I felt the message was so powerful, that if nobody would publish it, I would do it myself. Mm-hmm. And so I decided that I would print 1,000 copies, and if nobody wanted it, I would give it away to everyone. At least I would have done what the universe asked me to do. Mm. And so I did that. I got it, translated to Danish because I write in English, and I got it printed. And at the same time, it was really, really interesting. One of my closest friends was, now she's not living anymore, one of Denmark's most famous women writers. And she was a journalist on Denmark's biggest newspaper. And I had been coaching her for many years, and she was in the hospital very, very sick with cancer. And I visited her in the hospital, and I took the manuscript to this book to give it to her to help her on her healing journey. And so she was laying in the hospital reading the manuscript of The Road to Power. And the way the universe worked, the day she came out of hospital was the same day that the books came from the printer, and she wrote a full-page article that came on the front of the Sunday section of Denmark's biggest newspaper.
Wow.
Suddenly everybody wanted this book, and it became a bestseller in Denmark, and then it spread to the rest of the world. But it was
incredible.
It was like it came through me. I was an open channel for this information.
Yeah.
And the book just, like, it fell out of the bookshelf, and it had to find you because
what a force.
One of these people.
What a force. And how many books had you written before this book, before Road to Power?
At least 5 or 6 I had already written before that.
Because how many have you written now? Lots, right?
Yeah, almost 20 by now. Wow. But I mean, already, I suppose, even before you were born, my dear, I wrote a book in 1970 called Eat Brown Rice and Make Revolution. So I was really into, the first book I wrote was about, the hippies, the Beat Generation, the Vietnam War, the rebellion against the establishment, and then Eat Brown Rice and Make Revolution. And then I wrote all these books about health food and simple living and back to the land and all those kind of things. So the Road to Power was sort of the next stage in the evolution that I went through, starting to understand that food and natural living and exercise, all very important things, but I had been missing the element of the power of the mind. Because the way I discovered that in this late 70s, early 80s, the guy I was married to then, the father of my children, we had the first macrobiotic center in Scandinavia. We had this big health center in the center of Copenhagen where we had a restaurant, a health food shop, where we did cooking classes, and we had shiatsu and acupuncture, and we did dietary counseling. So we had this whole center, and we had lots of people coming. It was very, very successful. But then I started to notice at that time, because there was nothing about health food and diet and all, we were the first sort of in Scandinavia to talk about these things. We used to get all the people who were given up by the regular medical establishment, people who had cancer, and the people who were desperate, they would come to us. They had tried everything else. And we would give them diet, and some people got well and were cured, and some people didn't. Some people didn't survive. And then I started to notice that, like, what was the thing? If two people came to us with the same diagnosis, terminal cancer of certain kind, and we would give them pretty much the same diet, the same acupuncture, the same kind of treatment, why was it that the one person better and survived and the other person didn't? And I used to call it in the beginning like there was an X factor, something more going on than just food, exercise. And then that was when I started to get on the track of it had something to do with attitude. It had something to do with the way the person, they're thinking about their situation. Were they optimistic, pessimistic?
Yeah.
There was something else going on. And that was when I started studying the science of the mind, and the roads of power and these kind of things were born in me, came through me.
Wow, that's so powerful. And so do you feel, Barbara, so to go back in time, so you now work so you are a writer, you are a coach, you do a lot of things. Did it really start with the writing, and then or did you already study and then you started writing and then all the coaching started, or how, if we jump back in time, like how did it evolve for you?
I would say for me, it's always been, I mean, since I ran away from home in America at a very young age, this seeking my truth and the way out of suffering. Everything I have done has always been my own suffering, and then if I found something that worked and did it, it just seemed to me that always people naturally gravitated to me, like food things. And when I had almost died when we were going to it. That was in the 60s, so going to the guru out in the East and stuff like that. And then when I came back to Denmark, finding out about food and getting better, people would notice and they would say, "What are you doing?" And then I would say, "Oh, well, I'm eating brown rice and I did the rice diet." and people would come and say, "Well, how do you make brown rice? And how do you make miso soup? And how do you..." And it's so the whole center just grew out of people asking me questions. Then I had so many people asking me, then I would say, "Okay, well, you can come once a week home to me and I'll show you how to cook." And then it became cooking classes in my own kitchen. But then there were so many people that so it wasn't a plan. And you could say the coaching has been the same. How do you do this? You've written this book and I read it and it's really inspiring, but how do I apply this in my own life? Kind of like when you contacted me. So
yeah,
I've never had a plan like I want to do this and be that, but it's more, it works in and through me, the voice of of this intelligence.
Yeah, exactly. It's also, sometimes I say that as well, like, well, I'm not the one making the plans. That's what I always say. Like, you know, like it's always, I always look up. Like, it's not it's not me planning all of this, you know. So and so you were just saying something really interesting. So I want to jump even more back in time, because you were saying you ran away from the States. Like, how did that, what happened there?
Well, I grew up in a suburb of Washington, D.C. My father was a military man. He worked in the Pentagon. And I can't think of a more boring, uninteresting place to be born than where I was born. And I was like, I was very small, I was always very aware that I was different, and but I didn't have any reference. I didn't know anyone, but I knew that my family was just so ignorant, stupid. I mean, I knew I had to get away. And when I became a teenager and my parents were very strict and it was just so awful. But then I, got into boys and dating and sexing and all that exciting stuff. But anyway, to make a long story short, I had this boyfriend who got drafted to go to Vietnam. And my father worked in the Pentagon, and he was a really high military man. So it wasn't really very popular in my family that his daughter had a boyfriend who got drafted, and we were against the war. And that was all in early days. In the beginning, when the Vietnam War started accelerating, young white men, if they were going to college, they didn't get drafted. It was only the poor people and the blacks. But Steve, who I was dating, he dropped out of college and then he got drafted. And at that time, it wasn't today in America, the Army, you don't get drafted, you volunteer. It was a